Good morning. Happy Saturday. So we're going to slow it down. We're going to take, I think, 4 days to go through chapter 22. And again, it's good because these are the final days of the life of Christ. And Luke wants to make sure that we are really taking in what Luke is recounting so that we can interact with it in a very meaningful way. So today, let me start by asking you, how does a great leader act during times of distress? I mean, when everything hits the wall and things just go off the rails and you're the leader, how do you react? What does a great leader look like? Well, we're going to see some of that this morning as we read Luke 22, 1 through 30. Now, in the first 30 verses, the breakthrough that the religious leaders have been waiting for, well, it's about to happen. And even if you haven't read the Bible, most of you know who Judas is. What you may not know about Judas is just how integral he was to Jesus' ministry team. I mean, Judas and Jesus, they loved each other. Judas loved Jesus. Judas was in charge of the money. He was the CFO of Jesus Ministries LLC, okay, if there were corporations back in the day. Judas had seen the miracles. He'd seen the healings, the compassion. He's seen Jesus teach, pour himself out for people. He'd seen some incredible things that as he saw them, his heart became more and more convinced that his decision to follow Jesus was the greatest decision he had ever made. I need you to see that. He was in the inner circle. He was one of Jesus's guys. And he had seen Jesus, full of grace, mercy, truth, like few others have ever seen. So having experienced all of that, he watched Jesus, how many times did he see Jesus preach the Sermon on the Mount, right? The upside down kingdom, and how the kingdom of God was being made manifest on earth, and it looked different, but it came to lift up and remember the forgotten, the marginalized, the outcast. But you see, somewhere along the line, this is what I hope we can see, somewhere along the line, what was once the most meaningful relationship to Judas, it changed. And the repetitive preaching of, being selfless and, not seeking glory in this life and to put others ahead of yourself. I mean, after a time, it just started to go from, wow, this is incredible, to, in the heart of Judas, it became apathetic. It's like, I've heard this one before. Oh yeah, I know this one. I've heard this sermon before. And then from that, it turned into, I'm sick of hearing this. I don't think I like this. So you see, in the text, it says that Satan entered into Judas. And that is what happened. But it's important that you understand, this isn't like one of those deals like the devil made me do it. Like, Judas is not the victim. Right? It would be very wrong to read the text like that. Judas is not a victim. See, it says in James, the letter of James, chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, it says that temptation, it comes from our own evil desires, which entice us, drag us away, and then those desires that drag us away, they give birth to sinful actions. And then when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. And that is the progression of sin and its consequences. This is what happened to Judas. So Satan entering into him, it's fertile ground because Judas had already decided that this future to which Jesus was pointing him to, it was not worth the cost. And that most precious relationship to him suddenly was worth 30 silver shekels. Wow. Now, let me ask you this. If you were a leader of people and you were betrayed like that, okay, how would that affect your leadership? I mean, where would your focus be? Wouldn't it be on yourself, how you've been wronged? And in the midst of this great personal betrayal, would you have the headspace or the heart space to actually focus on the other people that you are in charge of? Simon Sinek says that great leadership is not about being in charge, but about loving and leading and lifting up the people that are in your charge. And here we see the most incredible display of leadership. You see, the reason we're slowing it down and we're taking 4 days to go through chapter 22 is because you and I have a lot to learn from Jesus. And what we learn and what we got by God's grace will continue to learn in the days to come is that in the midst of this deep, real, personal suffering, Jesus resists the temptation to be a victim. He doesn't allow his heart to be filled with personal injustices. He pushes those to the side, and instead, he is focused on the fact that he has only a few minutes. He's got a few moments left to be with his guys. And one of his guys is about to stab him in the back. So what does Jesus do? What does a great leader look like? Well, he prepares a meal for them, a traditional Passover meal, which has great symbolism. And again, here's another example of how meaningful things happen around a table when a meal is shared. You guys know I love to cook. Last night I had Joe, Jalissa, and Aviana over. And of course I had James and Leah with me and my wife. Harry, not here. Harry's on his Friday night dinner run with Joanne and Mike. But I can't tell you how meaningful it is. And as I get older, they become more and more meaningful. That I can cook. I can use a gift to bless people that people enjoy. And then I get to sit back at the head of the table and just watch everybody eat, and we talk and we interact and we just love on each other. It's a beautiful thing. And this is the kind of a setting that Jesus is establishing, except this is probably the most precious meal of any meal because of the great symbolism. And Jesus, as you read in the text, will go on to hold up bread and express it as this incredible, impactful symbol that this is my body prepared for you, and this is the cup, and this is my blood offering that I'm going to spill for you. And we're not going to even share this meal again together until we share it together in the kingdom of God. Wow. It's the meal of meals. The love and the purpose being exchanged is powerful. Now, it's during this meal that Jesus explains that someone's going to betray him. And I want you to take in the responses. First response is it me, Lord? And there's, everybody's unsettled. Like they're disrupted. Who would do this? And there's this sense of injustice. And how could this happen? But it's amazing. The disciples are empathetic and compassionate and maybe a little angry about this because they love Jesus. But what a picture of how that conversation around the table, how that quickly changes to which one of them is the greatest. It's like, here we go again. And again, I want you to take this in when you slow it down. Think of Jesus in this very vulnerable state, sharing something deeply personal and intimate, getting himself ready for this mission that's ahead, knowing how hard it's going to be, pouring into them. And he's saying, guys, someone's going to betray me, and then I'm going to die. I want you to eat this meal. I want you to take in the truth that I'm telling you about who I am and how I'm going to give my body for you. And I want you to know we're not going to have a meal like this again until we have it in glory. Think of the emotion in which Jesus is sharing this. He's not just telling them a religious story. He knows he's going to die. And in the midst of that deep sharing, the disciples are like, am I better than you? Am I more important than you? Hey, John, John and Peter are fighting who's the best. Think how hard that must be on the leader, right? Think of the thoughts like, don't you guys get it? Are we still here? Like, is this, Jesus has to be thinking, are we still here? Haven't you learned anything from the 3+ years you've been with me? But Jesus doesn't use it as an opportunity to reprimand them. He doesn't say, you guys are so self-absorbed, you narcissistic pigs. You guys are out. Yeah, how could you be so insensitive? He doesn't do that. Why? Again, because Jesus knows he has a few moments of interaction left with his guys, and he doesn't want one of their final memories to be how Jesus reprimanded them for being so selfish and so, just so self-absorbed. So instead he answers the question, and he actually answers the question by saying, look, you're not going to get this authority, you're not going to get this great glory. I'm going to tell you again, like, you're not going to receive that in this life. Actually, things are going to get really hard for you. They're going to get worse. It's going to get harder, not easier. But in heaven, in my kingdom that is yet to come, there will be 12 thrones, and you're going to sit. Each of you are going to have a seat around the table. You're going to have a throne to sit on. And it's a prophetic message. 12 is a very significant number in the Bible. And back hundreds of years earlier, when Joshua was the ruler of Israel, was the leader, he set up 12 stones in the Jordan River, and each of those 12 stones represented the 12 unique tribes within Israel. And so 12 always has a number of significance. And those 12 stones were still there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later. And when the Israelites would look at them, they would remember the covenant God made and the promises. And that's why it's not just a coincidence that God chose 12 men, right? And now God is saying, I got 12 thrones. So we go from 12 stones in the days of Joshua to 12 thrones, which are in heaven, upon which the disciples will sit. So it's a beautiful picture. But listen, I think we'll stop there. Again, I just want you to take in and let the humanity of Jesus over these next several days, let that really penetrate. Think about how faithful he is, how compassionate, how selfless, how he's willing to suffer. Consider his leadership and his ability to be so mission-focused that nothing is going to take him away from accomplishing the mission and crossing the finish line. Although it will be very close at one point, which we're going to read about very soon, which is my favorite text in the Bible. But that's it for today. Love you guys. Make it a great Saturday.